let me welcome everybody and acknowledge that we're all on ancestral lands. In my case, it's the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people here in Canberra. I am the president of the Global Alliance for Inter and Transdisciplinarity, and the Oceania Regional Network is our first regional network, so we're delighted to be hosting today's webinar. This is a network to really generate activity in the Oceania region around inter and transdisciplinarity. We have kind of stemmed from and are funded by a network of leaders which is called Nitro Oceania, of which Ian Gordon, who's on the call, is also a member. And so we've expanded from being a leaders network to being a much more open network. As you might have noticed, this is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, please take your name off and turn your camera off. But it won't, it's used by people who are interested in what we're doing who weren't able to be here today, by and large. I think I've probably filled in enough time. If you'd like to introduce yourselves through the chat, that would be a great thing. And let me, without too much further ado, lead us into today's webinar. So we're absolutely thrilled to have Allan O'Connor and Allanah Ryan here today to talk about how their institutions are grappling with introducing transdisciplinarity. Their bios are in the information that you will have been sent. The way that this is going to run is that each of them is going to talk for about 10 minutes, giving you an introduction to what their institutions do. We're then going to have about 10 minutes where they talk to each other, a kind of a dialogue, question each other, and then we'll open it up for everybody. So that'll take the first hour, and then we'll continue on for anybody who's able for another half an hour with a much more open dialogue, which we're calling a Talanoa in respect of to our Fijian colleagues who have this process of encouraging people to get together and discuss things, and we're delighted to be able to do something similar. So that's the process for today. It's fabulous to have so many of you here. Welcome. And Allan, I'm going to hand over to you to start us off.
Thank you. Let me find my buttons. So I take it you can all hear me okay. I didn't give you some forewarning, but I do have a couple of slides just because I thought, well, if Alana's going to have some slides, I'll have some slides as well. But I think it just helps guide. So I will share if that's okay. Not sure if it's active for me. Oh, yeah, looks like it. All right. You see those slides, is that right? Okay, perfect. All right, so thank you for inviting me along today. I'm a very new member to this inter and transdisciplinary network. So, and I was delighted to be invited by Gabrielle to talk about this particular topic. It's interestingly, because I am a new member, and I've kind of put up a couple of slides just to give you some lead in about what and why I'm doing what I'm doing and how the institution is responding to transdisciplinarity. And I've just called this accidentally transdisciplinary because there's been nothing deliberate about moving into a transdisciplinary field. But what is quite apparent is going down this journey is if you are serious and engaging in life, transdisciplinarity happens to you and you happen to it as much as anything. So I want to explore that kind of idea and give you some context around how we get here. Now, interestingly, I'm going to also acknowledge that I meet from the lands of the Kaurna people here in South Australia. And I wish to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, because we're interested in training those that are emerging. The other thing that I would like to mention just before I move on to this, of course, if we're talking about transdisciplinarity, our First Nations peoples also have a disciplinary knowledge to offer. So one of the things I might explore with you, Allanah, a little bit is, and I know New Zealand does this far better than Australia, I'd like to explore a little bit how you perhaps bring in the Maori knowledge into your transdisciplinarity. So just a heads up, that's kind of a question I have in my mind. But I think it's an important thing to acknowledge that there are many ways of thinking about disciplinarity. So what I wanted to touch on, you asked me to give you a bit of context and challenges and tips. So I've got kind of just a couple of slides on those things. But I wanted to pick up that theme of life as transdisciplinarity. And how did I end up here in terms of even thinking about transdisciplinarity and how I ended up in a role that kind of is doing work with transdisciplinarity in an institution such as what will be, as of the 1st of January next year, Adelaide University. I'm jumping the gun a little bit and actually using the logo and the presentation material now because we're all but merged, really. So my area is innovation and entrepreneurship. So, and now having come through that started my studies in this area early 90s, late coming to academia, and I'll give you a sense of my career journey. What I've really come to understand entrepreneurship as is it's really about being a specialist generalist, both living that experience of being an entrepreneur and being involved in the study of it and facilitating kind of young students to think about entrepreneurship. What you really think about is that you've got a lot to do and you're responsible for everything, from taking out the rubbish to closing the biggest deal. So all of this means you have to be very specialist at being able to negotiate these generalist areas, which in itself brings in multidisciplinarity. And as you, particularly if you engage with the science areas or engineering, technology, psychology, etc., you start to bring in multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary responses to those entrepreneurship areas. The other part of that is the innovation part, and that is really about finding and implementing novelty. So the way we actually do that oftentimes is through the clashes of things which don't quite fit together or work together. So you actually find transdisciplinarity underpins some of the creativity of what we actually do. So that's from the academics perspective, but from a career perspective, I dropped out of high school, I spent some time in unskilled work, realized that that's going to take me very far, got into vocational engineering qualifications, loved that to an extent, but I had a passion and interest in music, so I went and explored that for a while. I'm a full-time musician. I studied jazz for a couple of years. Then I got back into the business world and started in business development and then into management. Started up my own businesses and been involved with innovation in many ways across the years. And later on, skipped the whole undergraduate thing, went to master's, a PhD, and now I'm a professor of enterprise dynamics. That journey is transdisciplinary. So that's kind of what I wanted to draw out of this. Both the academic field that I work in is not deliberately, but it is in essence, essentially transdisciplinary. My life experience adds to that and actually enables me to think about transdisciplinarity in the academic field that I'm in now. So some of the initiatives now to think about the university, where it's at, it's going through a merger, as I mentioned. So there's the two universities of University of South Australia and the University of Adelaide coming together as of the 1st of January 2026. It's been in process for 3 years. But really, it's interesting because when this journey started, and I was one of these people, I was very skeptical. Oh, this is a takeover, really. And we started we still kind of pick up threads of that. But as this journey has gone along, what we've actually found is the new university is trying to establish its own identity. So in some ways it's a takeover, but it's not a one-directional takeover. But what tends to happen is we're finding the strengths of each of the university and trying to leverage and make those more clear and actually stand up more clearly on a global stage. So that's the context within which we're working. So in establishing that new identity, is there a transdisciplinary agenda? Well, not really. there's no one that's actually said in this emerging situation, we want a transdisciplinary focus. But what they have said, and I think this is interesting, because what they have said is we're interested in actually creating a set of core courses that every student should actually do. And what that is predicated on is the idea of the future of world of work. And where is it going? So they're introducing, they've got 6 knowledge domains, and I've listed them here. It's about artificial intelligence, not academic integrity, but artificial intelligence. What data is and how we actually manage data. It's about ethics, culture, the First Nations view, and the area that I get to look after is the entrepreneurship and design thinking. So those 6 core courses in themselves offer multidisciplinarity. Now, the important thing to note around these is these core courses are for all students across the university. They're for all students at different levels as well. So we won't necessarily know when we go into the classroom where they're coming from or what stage they're at. So in and of itself, creating this approach, because we are welcoming students from across the university, it is introducing transdisciplinarity in the classroom. So all of a sudden, we have to now think about and work with multiple disciplines. So in a way, it's tacitly transdisciplinary. It's not an overt kind of direction that's been given that we're going down a transdisciplinary path, but it is overtly or covertly, perhaps, maybe that's not quite the right word, but it is kind of an approach that is actually seeping into the pores of what we actually do because of the way we've actually moved forward. So I've said we're on a journey. So there's been some challenges in making these core courses work. So because it's all across universities, all across the university in all disciplines and all school levels or year levels, we actually have brought together a lot of different disciplines to think about the entrepreneurship and design thinking. No point in just coming from one disciplinary view. It was a case of having to draw all those disciplines together. So that means you've got a lot of skills and approaches in the one room competing for space. And in the way of life, people tend to think about their discipline as the most dominant discipline. This is the way we should do it. So managing those skills has been a challenge. The learning challenges, I'm preempting here. I'm not sure yet because we haven't started delivering these courses until next year. But I reckon there's some challenges around the recognition. How do we recognise students as completing these things when the university has given them a mandated course to do that says, we think you'll benefit from this? So how do we acknowledge the recognition of students and their completion of it? There is some time issues that I think are in terms of taking on what we do. It takes time to filter through and work through those questions and debates. And there are perhaps fractured experiences between what they might experience in a core course environment that we have, and then they move into their more regular program coursework. So there's those kind of challenges I see. Interestingly, there's also system challenges. There's scheduling and timetabling. That where do we put these courses in when they're open to everyone and we're maximising choice for students? So those kind of practical things come. And there's questions like the financial distribution. Who owns these courses when we start to talk about things that are really transdisciplinary? And Gabrielle, I see you want to actually cut me off. So can I just have one more or do you want to jump something in?
Just do it quickly. Go ahead.
Okay. So you asked about tips, and I thought this is the kind of thing that would be useful. Bringing together disciplinary diversity, that is paramount to actually getting this done. Having those conversations, and where that leads to is a pretty long, hard and honest discussion amongst colleagues. Be prepared for that, allow the time. Consult broadly, not just inside your university, but outside. That's been the key to what we've been doing. And it needs time. You need to allocate the time in actually doing this. So those are my quick tips. I hope I haven't taken many more than my 10 minutes, but that's me for now.
Fantastic. Many thanks, Allan. So we're going to go from covert transdisciplinarity to overt transdisciplinarity. Allanah, the floor is yours.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. I will just share, just bear with me while I find the correct screen. Okay, so look, it's great to be part of this conversation. I certainly recognise a lot of Allan's experiences and what we're doing at Massey, but we're starting from a quite different place. And just to kind of say a little bit more about myself, so I come from an academic background as a sociologist. For many years, I was a lecturer in sociology. I've been the head of a school, which was a large social science school. It had all the social sciences except for psychology. And then in 2016, I took a role as the Associate Director of Sustainability, which in my view is really about sort of strategic issues around sustainability. I'm not an engineer. I'm not somebody who's operationally focused on sustainability. And I've been involved with developing a climate action plan for the university and using that to develop climate leadership in the academic space, as well as how we operate as a university. I really like working in what I would call third spaces, so I see myself very much as although I no longer act as an academic, I'm not research active. I only give the odd guest lecture, so I'm not actively teaching, but I work with academics, and I also work with my colleagues in the estates section of the university, which is where I'm now focused. There's a lot happening in the university. There's a lot of change, and that I've kind of embraced that in the way that it offers opportunities and challenges for things for us to do in the university. Just to say that I'm the co-chair of a working group on this project, and so Associate Professor Nicola Brown is the other co-chair. So she's an academic, engineering background, currently works in the College of Sciences, leading science and sustainability. She was unable to be here today, but I will sort of speak a little bit about where we've got to and where we're kind of hoping to go. So just in terms of the context, the university already has a very strong focus on transdisciplinarity. It's embedded in our university strategy. It's embedded in teaching and learning plans and in our research plan for the university. We've had quite a lot of, in the past, funding around supporting transdisciplinary research by providing opportunities for academics across the university to come up with a big project and to collaborate together, and then the intention of that funding was then that those kinds of projects would spill out into external funding. So we've had quite a lot of focus on transdisciplinarity over the last 5 years, I would say. But last year, there was a major piece of work done out of the Provost's office on curriculum transformation, which was somewhat contentious. There was a lot of suggestions made through that process that many academics were not happy with. But what came out of it at the end of the year, as part of it, it covers things like quality of teaching and so forth, but I'm only going to focus on the transdisciplinary stuff. So there was a clear focus on transforming our academic offering, including developing new transdisciplinary offerings. So that was quite broad, kind of, but slightly anodyne but meaningless. How are we going to fill that? So last year, one of the suggestions and proposals was that the university do something similar to you, Allan, which was to have 3 core courses that every university student would have to do, but they were specifically transdisciplinary. Everybody apart from those who couldn't because they were in a professional qualification. So that was widely disliked and did not make the cut. So we came into a process where a working group was established in February of this year. We've had direction from the provost to start from a kind of blue skies approach, be bold in our thinking, not assume that what we've done in the past is what we will do in the future. And so we've now got to a point where we've got a current proposal for a bachelor's and master's of what we're calling at the moment, it's a placeholder name, impact and innovation. And just to give you a sort of sense of the time frame that we're looking at, so we actually started in February, but that period of time I kind of call throat clearing. So we had meetings of the working group and of a reference group, which is also part of the project. So discussions about what does transdisciplinarity mean, how we're going to do it, did a little bit of kind of desktop research, trying to understand what other universities have done, understand what we already do. So prior to May, there was a lot of that kind of background work. But from May now to November, we're in a pretty tight process of developing some options, getting staff and students engaged on the draft, refining the proposals that can go to our college boards, and then drawing up a proposal for a QAP. So that's the Committee for University Academic Programs that New Zealand has for any new program, has to go through that process. So an early notice goes to our internal academic committee in November, and then hopefully there'll be an approval at that point. So it's pretty tight. We're kind of galloping through it, and so we sort of, this is a good time for me to think about what we're doing and to kind of reflect on where we've got to, and I'd be really interested to hear on people's kind of observations. But just to say a little bit about what is the thing that we're doing. So like, this is hot off the press. You're seeing this before Massey colleagues have seen it. It was, so one of my colleagues, Charlie Potter, designed this. It's the kind of big picture overview of what we're trying to do in the space. Currently, we're calling it impact and innovation because we want to cover not just sustainability, climate action, planetary health, but a whole range of impact and innovation space. And the kaupapa, so that's a Māori word for purpose, really. And the underlying reason why we're doing this is that we want our students able to help make better worlds through collaboration, innovation, critical thinking, and creativity. And so we're doing this because we're responding to the polycrisis that we see in the world, and also changes in the world of work. So I won't go through those, that will be familiar with most people, but we're really taking on board those things as a background to what we do. So on the right, you see what the kind of students that we might be aiming for in our bachelors, so school leavers who want something different from our typical BA or BSc, or more focused things like a Bachelor of Education or a Bachelor of Regional Planning, something where they can feel they can make a difference in the real world. And the masters would be for people who want to possibly change careers or get new skills because they recognise that the space that they're working in, the profession, the occupation, the communities requires different kinds of skills than they currently have. So providing them with transdisciplinary knowledge there is what we want to do. So how we might do that in terms of the bachelors, again, this is very broad. This image here is a whare. So it's a Māori kind of representation of a meeting house, which would be on a marae. And it sort of incorporates the idea of in the whare is a place where you can have debate and discussion and contention, but it's a safe space. And what we were trying to do was to find a way to represent the depth that we wanted to have in our courses, and also the breadth. So the depth for us comes from two things. Well, the depth comes from the project spine, which is a project-based approach to learning about transdisciplinarity, but also a major, which might be an existing major, or it could be a subject-focused major. And then breadth will come from a more liberal arts collection of courses that students can choose from across the university. So this is very much, big picture. We've got a lot of work to dig down into what the project spine will look like. And we're really interested in testing with staff and students if this is an approach which kind of syncs with them. Is it one which will kind of add value to what we're doing? So just to kind of end on the challenges, and as I say, we're right in the middle of this, and I feel like, it's a definitely an evolving, emerging space. But there are kind of 6 that I've kind of come up with that are of interest, I think, to me and possibly to others. So we have a project group which was constructed of a reference group and a working group. These people were volunteers who, at the end of 2024, when there was an expression of interest in the university, they put up their hands and they said, I'm interested in this transdisciplinary stuff. And then in January of this year, they were invited to be on either the reference group or the working group. Nicola and I had also put our hands up, and we were asked to co-chair it. So I believe the provost made the decisions about who would go where. So there's a kind of a group of people who are volunteers. For the academics, most of them have no committed time to this. It's just it's considered to be part of the service component of their academic role. So there's a kind of a question in my mind about whether or not we're sufficiently resourced, but we're doing pretty well with the people we have. It's been really hard. Massey is based across 3 campuses, Auckland, Manawatu, where I am, and Palmerston North and Wellington. So most of our work is online. That's been very difficult, quite challenging to build a sense of us being a team. We had 2 one-day in-person workshops, which helped with that. But that's just an ongoing challenge. Ownership of the project, I guess, in the sense that we've had this top-down mandate from the provost and the senior leadership team. They want to see something in the space, but there's no committed school or college, apart from the College of Science, which is shepherding this through the paperwork. There's no staffing yet. So we're kind of in this process of SLT wants something, lots of people want to develop something. How does all that work? So there's kind of interesting issues around that. The time frame is obviously incredibly tight. So and there could be potentially a break on collaboration and creativity. And there's certainly been amongst some members of the working group and more broadly who are saying we're trying to do this too quickly, and that we really should take more time to develop these proposals. Nevertheless, we're trying to have something for November. If it's not ready, then we may take longer, but we are trying to meet a very tight time frame for if it's approved internally and externally, we'd be delivering new courses in 2027. There are the kind of typical staff concerns. I think Allan mentioned some of these kind of skepticism. There's skepticism amongst many staff around transdisciplinarity anyway. The undermining of disciplinary knowledge. Because Massey has been through quite a lot of cuts recently in terms of programs and staffing, there's also fears that the new qualifications will mean cuts in other areas. So what will that mean for staff? Where are these students going to come from? And the risk of kind of cannibalising current courses. So they're all things that we're kind of talking about and with staff at the moment. In terms of the delivery model, don't know what that looks like. So and Nicola and I are going to be meeting with the provost in a month or so to start talking about what the delivery model might look like, who will staff it, will there be a new school, or will this be a kind of program committee which goes across our current structures? Is it going to be delivered internally, distance, or a hybrid model? All of these are questions yet to be answered. And I guess the resourcing of them is a pretty big question there as well. So the funding, so there are kind of internal concerns around the kind of protection of silos, colleges being concerned about money coming from their funding for their staff and programs. And we have inflexible administrative structures like almost every university I know. And then externally, we do have a challenge in that the government, the TEC, so the Tertiary Education Commission, which funds universities in New Zealand, has changed some of the priorities. So for new courses, there's a big focus around what's good for the economy, and particularly focus around STEM and a very narrowly defined STEM and technology focus. So we're going to have to negotiate and navigate that, because if TC won't fund it, then the courses can't be delivered. And then finally, there's a kind of intellectual challenge, I guess, in the discussions, like, are the proposals transdisciplinary enough? And there's an interesting kind of, it's a tension. I wouldn't say it's a kind of a, nobody's dying in the ditch over this, but there's a lot of discussion around how we approach the qualifications and the development of them, from those who favour more of a focus on co-creating with students in a very, very bottom-up, student-focused design model, to those who are more interested in around pragmatically, I guess, a more structured and typical program delivery. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Allan.
Yes.
Allanah.
My own self-made
so-
title is
And that's what you'd like to be known as.
atmospheric economist.
And
I don't know who's
Good question.
Can you
So
please-
it's a
can you
performative
please
persona.
mute yourself?
and
Sorry.
cited,
I don't know who's, I'll go through and mute you all again in a minute. So we've now got 10 minutes where Allan and Allanah will kind of ask each other stuff to kind of start to generate a conversation. And I can see we've got some questions coming into the chat, and then we'll have a good 20 minutes for kind of open discussion. So Allan, you had asked Allanah the question about Indigenous, but why don't you start off by talking about how you're incorporating Indigenous, given that you've got a First Nations stream in what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. See, the First Nations, perhaps I should backtrack a little bit to actually say the way these courses are developed. Basically, there's a lead or a co-lead situation, and it really is about a knowledge domain. So in that sense, each of the courses are not necessarily transdisciplinary designed, if you like. It is very much about delivering on a knowledge domain area. What is transdisciplinary is how we actually receive students and teach that knowledge. So each of those things are quite, and as I look across the courses, they're all done in certain ways. So what that means, there is a first knowledge stream, one course, which is really about how we engage with that first knowledge practice and what that actually means. And there's a separate group that actually is looking at how they do that. In my own course, which was, well, not my own course, but the university's course, I don't own it, we're thinking about a range of knowledges. So what we're actually looking to drive is the transdisciplinarity through the Sustainable Development Goals. So we're putting those up as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to say, these are the kind of challenges we have. As we kind of introduce those, there will be opportunities for them bringing in, well, how do we understand those challenges? How do we get stakeholder perspectives on this? How do we design to actually, because design thinking is part of this, it's not just all entrepreneurship. How do we design solutions? And this is not entrepreneurship in terms of we need to get a business venture. This is entrepreneurship in terms of being entrepreneurial in finding solutions, some of which may be commercially viable, who knows, but not necessarily the case. It might be a policy dimension, or it might be setting up a career direction in research, who knows what students will come through. But it's putting up these challenges as through the Sustainable Development Goals, and then asking students to respond to these challenges using design techniques which bring in those multidimensional voices, which could, and we hope, will be prompted to think about the First Nations viewpoints.
Re-ask your question of Allanah. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Re-ask your question to Allanah.
Oh, my question. So my question was around the Maori knowledge and how that actually is playing a role in the transdisciplinarity. How do you bring that voice into that those settings where you can leverage that other different dimension of disciplinarity?
I mean, that's a great question. So we have on the working group and reference group, we have Māori academics and those who are in Māori curriculum development. So we talk about mātauranga Māori. So mātauranga is knowledge. So it's that knowledge space. So I would say that in a sense is a kind of a background to the discussions that we've had, rather than at the moment we're not really focusing particularly on how we'll incorporate it, but it's acknowledged that, for example, in the project spine where we start with, the first project is around people and place. So that will probably start with the idea of students understanding this place, so Aotearoa, the treaty, what does that give Māori and non-Māori and treaty partners a space to be in this place of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and then we would increasingly sort of develop understandings as appropriate through the project spine. But there's also opportunities for students in the majors to sort of take a Māori studies major. But what we want to do is to obviously have it embedded in a way which is appropriate for level. So it might be the master's qualification has a much stronger focus, because we might, again, it partly depends on, we still haven't done our external engagement in the sense of going out to talk to communities, iwi, but once we do that, I think we'll have a better idea of how to start incorporating that in. But I think it's because the university is based on being Te Tiriti-led, and we have a policy around that, so it pretty much informs all curriculum development now anyway. So in terms of its connection to transdisciplinarity, so many Māori would say that Māori knowledge is by nature more transdisciplinary than other disciplinary forms. Nevertheless, there are still specializations and ways in which knowledge is bundled up. So I think what I imagine is once it comes to the point where we start to develop courses, this is when those conversations will start to get much more detailed. So at the moment, we've been trying to keep things at a relatively high level, recognising the significance of that to obviously the way we develop the program, but not getting too much into the detail of that. And that has been a bit of a challenge just in general, is like this. We're constantly going between, getting in the weeds, because people like to be in the weeds sometimes, and then the big picture thinkers, and then how do you cross those two kind of levels of conversation? And I'm much more comfortable being in the big picture rather than the weeds. That's the kind of person I am, and I'm trying to sort of keep it at that level so that we don't spend a lot of time now on things which we won't know how to deliver or to think about until we actually know who's going to be teaching these courses, which is yet, as I said before, to be decided.
Did you have something you wanted to ask Allan?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was interested in because I guess we've had a similar kind of experiences that different disciplines all competing for space and how to hold that. And I guess the relationship between disciplinarity and the transdisciplinarity. I mean, there are screeds of journal articles on this, I know, but just interested in how that's played out in your space.
Yeah, good question. So what we found is and I'll talk predominantly from my experience of the Entrepreneurship and Design Thinking course. So it was really a matter of bringing in, and I deliberately chose people. I'll go back a step because it's not quite choosing people. There was an open expression of interest put out to all staff of anyone who was interested in actually developing these particular courses. Then it was once that process went through. After that, I was approached directly to kind of think about leading this development in this particular space. And in approaching that, it was obvious to me, entrepreneurship, and I'm sure I've got a range of scholars on here from a range of disciplines. Some people will actually react to entrepreneurship and say, no, it's deadly, it's evil, it's kind of, we don't want entrepreneurship. And I was very conscious of that. If we work across the university, we have to have openness to those different viewpoints and understanding how we respond to that and actually accommodate those different views. So that was really important to me. So we deliberately selected people from different parts of the universities across both universities to come together and really have those conversations about what do we mean, how are we trying to get, what kind of outcomes are we trying to get? And at the end, we all want similar kind of outcomes. The language of how we get there often gets in the way. And this is where we talked about I talked about the time thing before. You do need to have the time to have those conversations. Like, what are you talking about? This is so bad for the environment, or it doesn't look up. Those kind of, and this capitalist society is going to drive us to the end of the world. All of those kind of questions, you really need to be able to surface them and actually say this, and this is how we respond to them. So I think that's the answer to part of your question. There's a second part to that, which I didn't note down, so now I've forgotten. But if that covers it, that's I've done well. But if not, if there's another follow-up to that, happy to hear.
No, I think I guess a comment and reflection around, so we've used this word innovation as a placeholder in the title, and that's also been a bit of a trigger word for some people because of the kind of way in which innovation might be understood. But and I think that what you're suggesting about the importance of surfacing the questions from the different positions so that we have those conversations is really important. And as you say, having the time. And I guess that's our challenge, is that possibly we won't, although we are going through quite an intense, like 2 weeks in the middle of August when we're having the staff and student engagement, where we will be doing things in person on each campus, as well as having an online hui and a ability for staff and students to feedback through a form. So we're hoping to kind of get some of, generate and get some of the concerns up and out, and then we can develop those into the next part of the process.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Look, thank you both. That's been a great start to the conversation, and I think it would be good now to open it up to others. So this is the second of the webinars that we've had this year. The first one was about courses that were already happening, and Deirdre Klinkter, who was one of the speakers, is here, and I'm going to hand the floor to her in a minute to reflect on what she's heard from the two of you. It's been terrific to have you both, and thank you to talk about it in the raw, if you like. It's still being developed, it's still ongoing, and it's a very different place to be and to be talking from than when you're already in there teaching. And after Deirdre, I'm hoping, Jane, you might be willing to make your point. So just let me know if you are. I'm just giving you a heads up. And then
Thanks, Gabrielle. Yes, I'm happy to do that.
I'll stop directing. And so Deirdre, to you first.
Thanks so much. It's so interesting and so amazing to see these great presentations about the incredible work that you're doing in your institutions. And I think what strikes me is that situation where those institutional and structural imperatives collide with the philosophy or the conceptual idea of transdisciplinarity and why we are drawn to it and why we think it's needed in the world. And I think in both of these presentations, those tensions and negotiation between what perhaps the university execs think transdisciplinarity is and can offer versus what it actually entails, and the complexities, how long it takes to negotiate these things, how do we ensure that the space is afforded to everyone, how that plays out. And I do feel like it's a window of opportunity to elevate these approaches in our universities. And it's so amazing to see how it's happening everywhere in the region. But I also feel like perhaps the solution or, the answer is kind of looking for the problem, but the problem is maybe the wrong problem. It's the scale, it's the putting people together into larger classes. And how do you navigate that tension between really wanting to create very meaningful experiences for each and every student versus the institutional need for scale and kind of the imagined idea of what these subjects will achieve? So I don't know if you have any reflections on that.
Allanah, do you want to go ahead, Allan?
Whatever.
Yep. Go ahead.
I'm happy to jump in on that because it's an interesting thing. I guess from emerging two institutions merging together, we have a very unique situation. In what I highlighted earlier in the presentation was that there is a search for its own identity, its new identity, which isn't either of the old ones. So, and with that, we've got the luxury, if you like, of the openness of investment in these courses. So these suite of 6 courses, which, by the way, I'm talking about the transdisciplinarity, but when I look across the courses and we meet every fortnight to sort of say, how are we going? We sort of have the heads of the courses meet every fortnight. When you look across them, they're all kind of taking very similar approaches in terms of what we actually do. So interestingly, this is why I raised the point around scheduling and timetabling, because it is the way they've approached this is they're maximizing the student utility of these and saying we must, one of the guiding principles is actually provide choice for the students. We have 6 courses, but we don't really know who is going to enroll in what. So there is that creates some really interesting challenges around, well, what size rooms are we going to have, and how many are going to enroll in one course? We could end up with a couple of thousand in one course and 200 in another. So how do we actually do all that timetabling and scheduling and all of those issues? So they're issues which I'm happy to sort of say, that's the admin's people problem. Just tell us what we need to do. So, and that's become an interesting part of this aspect, I guess, is because we can get embroiled in a lot of that. And it does take a lot of time and energy. But because of this merger, because of the structure of the merger, it's given a very discrete group of people a purview to look at those particular issues and bring back to us and negotiate back to us as academic deliverers or designers of the thing to say, how are we going to make this work? So there's been this constant flow between reaching those points of scale and actually the academic interest in actually delivering the best outcome for each student. So there has been that to and fro. Where we've landed is smaller classes. So there will be, you would think we'd want larger ones, but we're actually designing it around smaller classes. And we're designing it in such a way that we've got some really rich background online resources to support that. So this is what partly my time will be an issue. I think that that covers it. Yeah, Allanah might have a few things to say.
Thanks, Leah. Just a couple of comments. I mean, that really is an interesting kind of dilemma for the university and for us and the work that we're doing. So we've had pretty clear message, I guess, from the provost that what she's looking for and the SLT are looking for is volume in terms of more students, because we need that to help pay the bills at that kind of level. And I would say that most of the academic staff who are interested in thinking about transdisciplinarity are more interested in masters, which will have a smaller number of students probably enroll, because their interests are more closely aligned, I think, possibly to research and to their own kind of careers and students that they've had. The other thing that I'd sort of say, which is a bit of a kind of a conundrum for us, is that Massey has had a long history of distance education, and most of our students still now are distance. I think it's about 2/3. It's possibly higher than that, and the numbers of internal students on campus is getting smaller. But what we want is our bachelors to be an in-person experience, so that people will come to a campus and they will get that experience, and they may have to do some of their courses online, but we want that cohort on campus. Also the ability to use the campuses as living labs and connect with the city. So all of those things are tensions that they're yet to be worked through, because they link so much to resourcing and what the university will also agree to resource in terms of how it will be staffed and will there be a school and all of those kinds of things. So all those issues are kind of still a bit ahead of us, but certainly aware that that's a real tension.
Before we come to, thanks, Allanah. Just before we come to Jane's point, I wanted to throw in Anne's from the chat, which is how social partners and stakeholders are being involved in the design, delivery and development of the courses. Allanah, do you want to go first on that one?
Yes, I can do that, because at the moment, not. So the intention is to get some feedback on our proposals from key stakeholders, but once we get to the point of designing courses, they will be very much, particularly for the masters, there'll be a kind of a project focus for an application final capstone thing for them, for students, but also for bachelor students. We'll be expecting them to work with industry, community or organisations. So we will be doing that, but we're just not at that space yet.
Yeah, so from our perspective, I suppose, given the lead up to a merger, to the merged entity, we've had, in some ways, the luxury of time, but at the same time, it's never enough time. But we have had some time, or the development of these courses have been done in 2 stages. The first was a real design phase in terms of what are we trying to achieve here, what is the overall outcome. We're now in the development phase in terms of actually working up the materials that actually go with it. So through those, particularly that design stage, we did have external groups where I had a series of advisory groups. We consulted with, we had like an open day, well, not so much an open day, but an open session for students to come in and hear about these, or not only students, it was a broader community approach to sort of come in and hear about these courses. And then we had little stands which almost like a poster stand, and sort of come and go and visit that booth, and they move people around the room. I say they did because I wasn't there. I had to go somewhere else. But we had like stations for each of the courses, and we moved the groups around the stations. So as we got lots of just community feedback in terms of what we were doing. That was a real thing that actually did inform how do we approach these? What are we trying to get from them? That was on top of the kind of advisory groups, and I had both internal and external stakeholders on those advisory groups. Now, as you move into the development phase, we're going back to those groups. We probably won't go back to them as often, but as we develop, we'll say, let's check in. This is what we said at the design phase. This is what we've developed. Are we on track still? Are we kind of meeting those expectations we set up in those first stages? So that's the process. And then the last piece of this will be when we get to the delivery of the course, and I'll speak about my course particularly, we will engage with industry in terms of they're the recipients of the projects that the students work on. So we'll engage with a day event kind of activity is what we envisage at this point. And it'll be optional for students to sort of come through all this. And then if you want to pitch this to industry, we will make sure we have industry stakeholders that will actually engage with you. And that gives them a chance to test what they've done in a real circumstance with industry and community stakeholders. That's the kind of thing we're doing.
Thanks for Anne, and thanks for the question, Anne. Okay, Jane, be provocative.
Great, thanks very much, Gabrielle. Actually, my comment relates to both my question and Anne's question. So in response to Anne's question, at the University of Canberra, we've run a bespoke co-designed graduate certificate in public policy for the National Indigenous Australians Agency. And as part of that, it is in our commitment to indigenising the curriculum, it's around recognition of First Nations ways of being, knowing and doing. And so our class very much is co-designed, and it's not just lecture-based, it's yarning circles, it's walks, cultural walks, it's all kinds of visits, it's different speakers directly from remote communities or urban Indigenous peoples, or we've got class members who are First Nations people, traditional owners and native title holders. And so then that links nicely to my first point, which was around the importance of a broad education. I'm a first generation university student, and so many of our National Indigenous Australians Agency people have also never been to a university, and coming into a space where on the one hand, they can suddenly see, oh, I can engage with this because this is my way of knowing and doing, and not just an academic top-down saying you must conform to this particular way. And then the other hand, when I was 17, I was so enriched by different thoughts, ways, knowing, doing, readings. And I think at the moment we're seeing so much clamping down on these are not sustainable. They don't lead you to a path, a definite job. But I think that's the beauty, and the way that Allanah explained it was that's the beauty of that education. And I think particularly it resonates for first generation students who it just opens your mind so much. So they're my points.
Allan, either of you want to respond? Thanks very much, Jane.
Yeah, because it's interesting when I heard Allanah talking about the incorporation of the First Nations knowledge, the Maori knowledge. It was clear to me, Allanah, you're across the language, you're using the terminology, you know the names of the things you're referring to. That's not the case for me. And I think in an Australian sense, and maybe I can only talk from my own experience, I can't talk for everyone, but from an Australian standpoint, I do not feel as comfortable with even the language to actually, and there's 240 odd nations, First Nations in Australia, there's a lot of different languages too. So it's not like it's just one language. So we do have this complexity around that. So trying to bring that First Nations view is interesting to sort of grapple with. And I grapple with it, good intent, but I still grapple with how do I move into this space respectfully as well, and being aware of my own shortcomings and being able to engage with First Nations viewpoints. But what you're describing in terms of First Nations learning will take place in that First Nations course too. I have no doubt. I haven't seen the outcomes of their work yet, but I have no doubt that's the kind of experience they will get there. What I'm hoping, as people rotate through some of these courses, they'll start to experience that and bring those conversations into our classroom. So that interplay between the courses, I think, is also critical to actually getting that transdisciplinarity.
Just kind of maybe one reflection. So I guess Massey's quite lucky in the sense that we've had a bit of a history of, so we have a teacher education program which is totally in te reo, so Māori students can do all of their learning in te reo. It's been around for a few years now. We have a strong Bachelor of Māori Visual Arts, so we've got a lot that we can build on, and it's coming through and making those connections. So we've got things that we can build on. It's not saying that we're there and getting it all right. We're certainly not, but there is a basis on which we can build, and there are good relationships between staff, and we have academic staff as well as Māori support staff who can help us in that space. And the other kind of one comment I would make, Jane, when you were talking about kind of that students know that they can learn through their way of learning and doing, I think we're also thinking about that in relation to not just in terms of culture, but also in terms of learning style, and other kinds of things that students bring when they come to university, and sort of supporting that. And then the last thing I would say is that the thing about Mātauranga Māori is that sometimes it may not be appropriate to use it because the kind of issues around kind of colonisation and decolonisation of knowledge, and when is it appropriate to use and when is it not appropriate to use. So all of those are quite complex and will really need to be thought through and discussed kind of much more than we've got to yet. But that's certainly something that I think people at the university are up for.
Miriam, I wonder if this is a time to bring you in to talk about epistemic fluency. I should also invite anybody to put their hand up if they like. I can see that better than the comments. And I might also say it's kind of also a curse of being an academic, isn't it? That we want to be able to give people complete packages of knowledge, whereas in fact the space that we're working in is one of these, if we're not learning all the time, we're never going to be good at all the bits that we're trying to encourage other people to be good at. Miriam, are you on call and willing to talk about epistemic fluency, or should we move on to somebody else?
I probably couldn't actually speak about epistemic fluency.
We'll just ask your question then.
But yeah, I was thinking in the thread in the chat about the need for a shared language. And my own experience of just trying to find not shared language, but commonalities of language in interdisciplinary research has been bloody hard. You find that learning is used in different ways. You find that digital is used in different ways. All of the keywords that you can think of to do a literature search are taken differently in the different fields that you're trying to draw together. So the dream of a shared language is, I think, that a bit of a red herring, where the path is really to be able to listen to how different communities are using language and how different knowledges are being brought forth, sometimes from the same words that mean different things. Yeah, I don't know. I think that idea of fluency is valuable because it really is about being not able to speak every language, but able to listen and try to find the patterns and the meaning in new languages that you hear.
Thanks, Miriam. And Ian, you made a similar point. I realise we're running out of time. There are more questions in the chat. Allan and Allanah, I'll pass them on to you so that you might be able to respond to the people who asked them. Last word, 30 seconds. Allan?
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to Miriam's question as well. You're right. At the end of the time, I said there was never enough time, but you've had the conversation. Trying to find the understanding of what others mean, that's part of what we're actually doing. Whether we find the right language or not and agree on the right language is kind of almost secondary. It's kind of the fact that you've had the conversation, you start to clash and understand where other people's viewpoints are.
Allanah, last 30 seconds from you.
I guess the thing about the language, I'm a big believer in everybody having a shared object of attention. So whatever that thing is, whether it's poverty or planetary health or climate action, bringing the different perspectives, having a space in which it's safe to share different views, and being clear about what you want to do with that next. And I guess that's what I hope our qualifications will do, will give students the ability to do that wherever they are and whatever challenges that they're focused on. And there's a lot to learn in that space. And it's fun. I mean, it's challenging. Sometimes it's excruciating, but it's really, I believe, for me, that's what drives why I still want to stay in a university and do the work that we do, and why I believe universities are still important.
Allan, Allanah, thanks for getting us going on a really stimulating session, and thanks everybody who joined in one way or another. We're going to move on now. I know some of you need to leave. We're going to move on now to a more open conversation about that can spin off from this conversation, but it can also be about other things. So this is a kind of a convenient time for people to go, but also I know everybody will join me in thanking Allan and Allanah. It's a bit hard to do that online. But anyway, it's been a really good conversation again. And just to let you know, it'll be on, the recording will be available for people who want to revisit it, or for people who've missed it. So thank you. All right. So let's see who's left. We've got about 27 people still with us. So thank you, everybody. This is really an opportunity to have a fairly open conversation. So I'm going to, I know that the men on the call haven't had much chance to talk in the first half, apart from Allan. Sorry about that. Julian, I saw you nodding a few times, so I'm going to hand the floor to you in case you would like to lead us off. And anything that either on the talks that we've had or anything else that is kind of relevant to the general topic of transdisciplinarity.
Thanks for that. I do like to nod. No, it's funny because I just finished writing a message to Allan on the side, because I like how Allan, we run into each other often at conferences because of the entrepreneurship background, and I wanted to have more of a conversation with him around how do you weave entrepreneurship with transdisciplinary, and is it that different really? And I really love how Allan managed to leverage his experience, and I think we all have experience of doing things transdisciplinary, but for me I was always trying to hide the fact that I had an entrepreneurship background, and now, like, thanks to Allan's presentation, I'm like, cool, I think I can be transdisciplinary and I can be entrepreneurship at the same time. And I'd like to open it to the floor to wonder if others have the same approach in saying, like, are they hiding the discipline, or are they proud of it when they go transdisciplinary?
So thanks, Julian. Great. That's a great provocation to get us started. Just tell us in a few words, just tell us a little bit more about yourself. We can see that you're at the UTS TD school.
Oh yeah, so I did my PhD in entrepreneurship, in student entrepreneurship, and I only joined the transdisciplinary school about a year ago. And so I had that conversation when I joined during my interview, and as I was developing, I just developed a subject as one of the TD elective, and I took an entrepreneurial mindset approach to solve a complex problem. And so I'm really embracing the transdisciplinary aspect. I love how students all get. I mean, as an entrepreneurship lecturer, it's seeing teams made of so many disciplines. Like, when in the past we've had only teams of business students, you can see the difference, like the possibilities, the creativity, the depth into designing the solution, the different types of communicating a solution or just a challenge itself. It's just mind blowing. So I'm really enjoying my journey toward transdisciplinary.
Anybody else want to fess up that they're hiding part of their hiding who they are as part of their transdisciplinary journey? So what happens now is we try to get everybody involved in the conversation. So if you don't volunteer to talk, I will volunteer you. So Danielle and Monique, I wonder, and then Oren, I wonder if you'd be prepared to say something, anything. Just, this is a chance for us all to get to know each other, for us to talk about general things. So please, feel free to join in. Danielle, are you happy to join in? Thank you.
Thank you for this. Yes, well, hi, everybody. My name is Danielle. I'm with the University of Auckland, and I'm a researcher development advisor. And one thing that we're doing is trying to see how we could support researchers. So not in the master's and bachelor's level, but like pre-awards. And how can we give them the space to learn how to be more transdisciplinary, how to break down the silos between the different faculties, and also how to engage more with different communities, especially with Maori and Pacific communities, but also industry partners and businesses, and looking how we can create these spaces of networking and ideation workshops. So this has been really fun to see how it's actually being implemented within the schools themselves, but also how can we do them as ongoing workshops and resources. I'm trying to revamp our online resources. And so it's really interesting to see how many people are coming together in this space, because it is quite fluid and ambiguous in some ways. So just trying to make sense of it and seeing how I can support my researchers in this space. So just very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Danielle. Monique.
Oh, thanks, Gabrielle. And thank you both for the presentations, Allan and Allanah. It was super interesting. And I'm really curious about if there might be possibilities to do some collaborative research across different institutions around, how students are engaging with these different forms of transdisciplinary education. On the question of hiding things, my original degree was communications, and then I did a master's of what was called new media at the time. So I do, and because I came to academia late in my career, I do often feel like an imposter. I've worked in sort of innovation and strategy for most of my working life, which I find works really well with transdisciplinary teaching and the subjects that I teach. But I do often feel like, not having that deep sort of history of one discipline does make it challenging within the university structure as such, and what's recognised as, valid. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Monique. Do you have an affiliation now, or are you free ranging?
No, I'm in the transdisciplinary school.
Right.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
And Gedra. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Oren.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. It was really great. I'm the director of the Institute of Advanced Studies at the University of Western Australia, which is the only Institute of Advanced Studies in Australia, apparently. And I see my role, I'm fairly new in this role, but I see my role as trying to support interdisciplinary research across the whole university on the research level. Yeah, so I'm part of the research portfolio, so I'm not engaged in so much with students. But I do have about 30 years experience running a lab called Symbiotica, where we was the first biological lab dedicated for artistic research. So we were able to liberate knowledge, not so much engage in interdisciplinary knowledge exchange, but more liberating knowledge from the hands of biologists and biomedical researchers and put it within a cultural context. And this is something I would like to see continuing. Yeah, when Miriam was talking about language, I think, and I wrote a little bit about the idea of interdisciplinarity as a form of migration. And I believe that actually migrants are much better to engage in interdisciplinary research than anyone else, because they're already acutely aware of those changes in language, the way same words might have different meanings in different areas, and basically engaging those things with a level of respect. But then what I've done with the lab before this job was very much also engaged with the power structure around those relationships between different disciplines. So, as a migrant, obviously, you are engaged in a form of a different kind of power relationship with the host country, and how you level those power structures in order to allow different disciplines to engage on an equal basis is something I'm acutely aware of. Yeah, so that's basically me.
Yeah, a great point. It's getting lots of likes in the chat. So let me just open the floor to a few other people. Tom, maybe, and then Lohi and Mariam Ahmed. I saw you commented in the chat. So Tom, do you want to lead off?
Well, yes. I guess I teach computer project students who are working for a client, and part of what they have to learn is the language of their client, what discipline they are. They might be researching Japanese notes written by prisoners of war in World War II, or building an anti-ballistic missile system for the country. So part of what I have to do is, nudge them along that path. I'm not a believer in the transdisciplinary. You need to understand different languages of different disciplines. I don't know that there's an actual specific trans thing. And part of it's about dressing differently. So when I'm being a defense technocrat, I'll put on a severe black suit, or in extreme cases, a uniform. But when I'm at a university open source thing, I'll have a black T-shirt with computer code jokily written across the front of it. And I suppose the other thing is, when I'm dealing with academics, I hide the fact I'm qualified in education, because that's a real turn-off for them.
Thanks, Tom. And you're at the ANU, right?
Yes, in School of Computing.
Right, thanks, Tom. Lohi from PNG.
Thank you, Gabriella. And I just want to start by saying thank you, Allanah and Allan, for your presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I guess I can resonate with some of the things that you mentioned, and Allanah. Let's give me kind of thinking about broadly about. Let me put it this way. PNG is the most linguistically diverse country in the world. So how we can leverage, if you like, that diversity in terms of language and communication, enormous potential in terms of, the perspective that comes across from different disciplinary kind of understanding perspective, and so forth. And I, in my position now as the Vice Chancellor of the Pacific Adventist University, a growing university, previously, and Gabriel and I had connection in the past, and when in my previous life as the Chief Science Advisor for Papua New Guinea government, previously, for quite a while, for 8 years, and before that as a Professor of Basic Medical Science and Pharmacology at the medical school at the University of Papua New Guinea. Spent a lot of time, traversing the country, looking for elusive drug for cancer, HIV, whatnot, working at NIH and, Queensland Institute of Medical Research, and done, extensive collaboration across, and trying to kind of pick from the fact that, most of my effort is really integrated research, bringing different, disciplines together. And I've enjoyed that. I work with chemists, biologists, economists, looking at the assessment of, the assessment of the unique and biodiversity of Papua New Guinea. But here I am trying to kind of bring that together and I've always kind of embraced the fact that there is a place, there is in a context of bringing ideas together, and all I can say is that I'm keen as ever, as I hear, to kind of harness that potential in Papua New Guinea, because although you may see it from outside, there's a bunch of like whatever in PNG, but I can tell you, we are very different people. We speak 1,000 languages, dialect, and over 813 languages. How do you unite people who are really different, different in all respect, but potentially that diversity really is the basis which they bring different kind of understanding and knowledge. And I think, Allanah, I can resonate with that, the cultural kind of connection that we need to kind of maybe the classroom is no longer the setting to learn what we're learning.
Chloe,
I'd
yeah.
I'd rather go fishing, and be out there. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mariam. Yeah, you need to unmute. Not yet. You're still muted. There we go. We still can't hear you for some reason. So let me just, while you're getting the technology working, no, it's still not working. Melissa and Michael and Anne, can I call on you next? You're all off camera and muted. So let's see if we can get Mariam working, and then hopefully one of you will be happy to chime in. Try saying something. No, you've got to be good at lip reading. Oh, Mariam, that's such a shame. It says that you're unmuted, but it's, for some reason your speaker's not working. So I think we're going to have to resort to chat, unfortunately. So Miriam says to Mariam, try switching your microphone input. Fiddle around a while, and stay unmuted, fiddle around with your technology, and if you come to interrupt somebody else, we'll give you a chance. Melissa, are you there? Are you willing to chime in? It's always a bit risky asking people who've got their video off, because they're sometimes gone off or they've got a mouthful or something. Michael? Or Anne? Nothing doing. How about Rumen? Are you willing to share?
Hi, kia ora. Just wanted to share, thank you very much. And I wanted to ask if the recording will be shared afterwards as well.
Yes, it will. So it'll be on the website of the Global Alliance for Inter and Transdisciplinarity. We'll send everybody a copy of the link when it's up.
Okay, thank you very much for this.
Do you want to just say where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from Burloop, Perth at the moment. I lived before as well in Tamakimakoro, Auckland. I work with the Transdisciplinary at the moment, and I'm a member of the ITD network. I'm kind of interested, especially in the transition between business, art, and arts and humanities. So how to kind of indeed break the silos, what people were talking about, and how to get away of the stigma of entrepreneurship, but actually it's something that can be useful when done correctly. That's my 2.5 cents.
Well, it's good that we've got so many people with an entrepreneurship innovation angle. Allan, I'm sure you'll be very pleased. Evelyn, I see you're here. Do you want to say a few words?
Hello, everybody. I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties I have to deal with, so I prefer to stay silent and listen carefully.
Okay, no worries at all. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to say anything yet who would like to? Otherwise, we'll go back to the people who spoke as part of the Q&A but haven't kind of had a chance to really say more about what they're doing.
I can share a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead, Miriam. You were next on my
So
list.
I have something like 12-ish years in tertiary education. So that's my discipline if I have to align myself to something, Monique. But I started a PhD last year within a faculty of education, decided in less than 6 months that if I wanted to study what I wanted to study, that I was going to need to get out of a discipline and look at it from the outside. So I moved into, I'm at RMIT, the School of Global Urban and Social Studies there, which is basically looking at learning from the perspective of being human, which is bizarrely difficult to do from a school of education. And I speak entirely from my own experience of it in the first 6 months. But that's sort of what my transdisciplinary journey has been. So if someone asks me, what's your discipline now? I have this sort of hedging moment. I feel like I've got all of this alignment behind me that I've run away from. So there's a kind of unidentitying involved in it.
Thanks. Yeah, challenging and interesting journey that you've made. Mariam, I heard something go bang. Was that you getting through?
I hope it is, but I don't think it is. Oh, you can hear me? Okay, I'm so glad. Turns out I had to refresh the page to come back a bit. I think I mostly just wanted to emphasize what everybody else said about language. Really, it is the core of things. I'm an interdisciplinary researcher at CSIRO who looks at social ecological systems, and just to the point that one was making earlier about the disciplinary depth versus going across those disciplinary silos, we often find that you can't really produce a social ecological report without actually having a really good solid disciplinary strength and depth within it. But then you also need the skills to go across that. You also need the skills to remember that your audience is the one consciousness reading that report. So you have to make sure that it's logical and that the disciplines are actually coherent within each other and across each other. And there's a lot of, as a language nerd, there's just a lot of fun to be had in that space.
We're glad that we got you. Tyso, you haven't said anything, but I saw you applaud. And Michael, do you want to go?
I mean, sure. Like I don't really have a lot to say at this point because I'm still like I came here to connect and listen a bit to like other experiences. I joined the ITD Alliance last year and I gave a talk also at the conference in Utrecht. I'm a professor at the Tokyo College, which is an institute for advanced studies here at the University of Tokyo. So we have more of the issues related to the research side, and of course we only have postdocs and upward. Even though I'm also teaching in interdisciplinary programs, and we also have a new program that's starting soon called College of Design, which like builds in interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinary at the core of the curriculum, but it's only just starting now. But yeah, either way, I just like I'm very grateful for just like the inputs and for the sharing of experiences and like just figuring out like who's where and which kind of programs exist both in Australia and in New Zealand. So like I'm just very grateful to be here and be listening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great to have your input and to connect you and to see your face momentarily. So that's really lovely.
Thank you.
Deirdre, do you want to chime in on the more general conversation?
I had some great points I wanted to add, but now they just left my brain. I think perhaps relating back to that idea of entrepreneurship and innovation and transdisciplinary methodologies more generally, I was wondering, so I know, Allan, we had that conversation before, whether those subjects come together because of that transdisciplinary integration methodology, or do they come together because of disciplines just happening to be together in the room? And then what happens when there isn't a really clearly thought out pedagogical approach to enable those different perspectives to collaborate and integrate? So perhaps, Allanah, I don't know if you have any thoughts about the actual methodologies or scope in terms of integration and collaboration that you build in your subjects?
Well, go
Short
ahead,
answer
Allanah.
oh, the short answer for me is I don't. I'm not sure that I do at this stage. I think so. One of the things I didn't mention is that we're in our bachelors, we're thinking of having these majors which are new. So there would be climate action, circular economies, planetary health, and one other, which has just escaped me, which are not disciplinary in nature, but are that kind of share object of attention, and you bring all the different views to it. I think we're just, because we're still very much in a kind of early design phase, that development and delivery are yet to come, but they're conversations which we're having, but I don't have anything profound to add, or even not profound to add at this stage.
Starting to get tired. An hour and a half's a long time to go. So, Allan, you've had a moment with you and your fellow entrepreneurs who we thought were very much on the outer. There's all these secret entrepreneur and innovation people here.
Well, it's interesting. I'd like to respond to Gidra's question, really, because I've been learning and teaching, I guess, in entrepreneurship since late 90s, and it's still a fairly young discipline. But if I look over my engagement with it all this time, one of the key things was creativity in the earlier days. You have to use creative skills, and then that kind of migrated to you really have to use design thinking skills. So design became a particular thing. So these things which enable you to look and think and act transdisciplinary have been tools that have come along with the development of entrepreneurship as a delivery mechanism. But the other thing I'd like to just close out on from the entrepreneurship perspective is that when you're teaching the entrepreneurship, you are focused on a problem. And I think some of the conversation we've had is that transdisciplinarity is used as a way to approaching problem solving differently. So rather than, I think picking up on Tom's or Wom's kind of notion before, is it really a thing? And for me, I think about it as, well, it is a thing if you really want to create solutions which have appeal and kind of attraction. You have to think and actually respond to and join disciplines and create a solution which is systemic, which is driven by perhaps a disciplined approach, but people have got to use it. So it's psychology involved. There's a sociology of kind of markets. There's a whole bunch of stuff you have to think about and actually bringing entrepreneurship solutions to life. So inherently, it is the process of transdisciplinarity. I think as a field, we've been building tools to navigate that transdisciplinarity. And I think the kind of discussions, and I know UTS are already there in terms of thinking about the transdisciplinarity and the way it relates to entrepreneurship. So I think that's the next step for us to sort of as a discipline to really think about, I think.
So that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you so much, everybody who joined in. It was really great to hear who we have in the room, so to speak, all the different perspectives. Wonderful to see you all and to learn a little bit about you all. I hope you will come to future webinars. It would be, we really want to build this community. as a place where we can have conversations that are hard to have, whether transdisciplinary is a thing or not, whether we should be supporting the humanities, all that kind of stuff. If you're not a member of the Global Alliance for Inter and Transdisciplinarity, please think about joining, at least sign up for the newsletter. If you're all on the mailing list, otherwise you probably wouldn't have been here for this webinar. We're hoping to have one more to close out the year, and we're already starting to think about a whole bunch of interesting things to do next year. So if you're interested in volunteering, A, to help organise stuff, B, to give a webinar, feel free to. So thanks again to you all, and particular thanks to Allan and Allanah for a stimulating discussion that really then catalysed, I think, a much broader, interesting discussion. So thanks everybody, and see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle.